At 71, he thought he had done everything right. For nearly 50 years, he showed up to work without missing a single day. Always on time, always reliable, always giving his best. He raised his children well, paid off the house, and when the company threw him a farewell party, everyone congratulated him with warm smiles and a cake that read, "Enjoy your new life." Everyone said he should be proud. Retirement. Isn't that what we all look forward to? And at first he believed that too. He let himself sleep in a little later, sipped coffee by the window, read the newspaper, tended the garden. No more alarms, no more meetings, no more pressure. But within weeks, what he once called freedom began to feel like emptiness. 3 months after that farewell party, he passed away. Not from an accident, not from a sudden illness, but from something quieter, a slow, invisible unraveling of the spirit, the body, and the silent hours no one talks about. I'm not telling this story to scare you. I'm telling it because there are truths no one ever told him, truths no one ever told me, and maybe no one ever told you either. Truths more important than pension checks or free time. Truths about how you live when you no longer have a role to play, a place to be, or a reason to get out of bed. If you're nearing retirement or already there, I hope you watch this video to the end, because what I'm about to share isn't in any retirement handbook, but it just might shape the rest of your life more than anything else. The first truth: retirement steals your sense of control. The first thing he lost after retiring wasn't his health. It wasn't his memory. It was his control over how he lived each day. And that kind of loss doesn't scream. It slips in quietly, slowly, almost invisibly. When he was working, life had a rhythm, a purpose. No matter how tired he felt, every morning he had to get up, shower, get dressed, sip his coffee, eat breakfast, drive to the office. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Every step of his day had a reason, a structure, a pull. But the day after retirement, the alarm clock was turned off, and no one was waiting for him anymore. No emails, no meetings, no one asking, "Will you be joining us this morning? Are you free this afternoon?" The first day felt peaceful, the second relaxing. But by the third week, he couldn't tell Monday from Friday. He stayed in bed until he felt hungry. Sometimes lunch was just a slice of cold bread. He'd sit by the window for hours, staring at the garden, not even knowing what he was waiting for. Freedom without direction, turns out, is a beautiful little trap. He had plans, of course. He thought he'd learn to play music, take morning walks, finally finish those books he'd been saving for a decade. But when every morning feels like there's no rush, nothing ever really begins. One day he stood up and realized he couldn't even remember the last time he did something with true intention. Life no longer needed him, and slowly he forgot how to need himself. All the small decisions that once gave his days a sense of identity. Choosing what to eat, taking a walk at sunset, reading on the balcony. They didn't disappear overnight. They were worn down, day by day, until they vanished completely and he didn't even notice. The scary part isn't being forced to do something. It's waking up to nothing left to choose. No one told him this, that after retirement, if you don't rebuild your days with purpose and do it quickly, you'll enter a void, a soft, quiet emptiness, where you are no longer the one driving your own life. And the moment you lose that role, that sense of being the one behind the wheel, is the beginning of a decline that's almost impossible to reverse. The second truth: the body declines faster than you think. When there's no reason to move before retirement, he was considered healthy for his age. He didn't jog, he didn't go to the gym, but he moved every single day. Trips to the market, climbing stairs, pushing shopping carts, watering the garden, occasionally changing a light bulb or fixing a jammed door. Small tasks, ordinary things. But they were the invisible threads that kept his knees flexible, his heart steady, and his muscles awake. As long as life demanded movement, his body never had a chance to slow down. But just 1 month after retiring, everything changed. With nothing that had to be done, he started putting things off. No rush to get out of bed. Dusty windows could wait. When the lawn grew long, He just hired someone to cut it. Less chores, more sitting. That old recliner in the living room, the one he used to only sit in during the evenings, became his new companion from morning till night. At first it was just to watch the news, then lunch, then a nap, then zoning out to whatever was on TV. His body slowed down, and he didn't even notice. His knees ached more, his legs tired faster. Standing up felt like a task in itself. But the worst part? He got used to it. He began to believe, I guess this is just what getting old feels like. No one warned him that just a few weeks without regular movement, and the body starts forgetting how to move. Muscles not used begin to shrink. Blood vessels weaken from underuse. Your sense of balance, the one that kept you steady on stairs, starts fading. And by the time he said, I feel tired more easily these days, the decline had already been happening, quietly for weeks. There was no alarm, no voice whispering, you're losing your strength. It all happened in silence, every fiber, every joint, every breath. What broke his heart wasn't just the weakness itself, it was realizing he had once been strong and lost it, simply because no one told him to hold on to it. He wished someone had said, if you don't create your own reason to move, your body will assume it's no longer needed. And it's true. By the time he wanted to move again, even a short walk felt like a mountain to climb. Death didn't come in a single blow. It came from sitting still too long, from stopping little by little, from saying, I'll do it tomorrow. The third truth, losing your sense of purpose after retirement is what breaks the spirit the fastest. After stepping away from daily work, he once thought, finally I get to rest. But just a few weeks in, that so-called rest began to feel strangely empty. Before, even with a busy schedule, he always had a reason to get out of bed. One day it was a neighborhood meeting, another day fixing a leaky faucet, visiting his grandson. Even the smallest rituals, arranging flowers, brewing a hot cup of coffee, flipping the page on the wall calendar gave him a sense of life. Not much, but enough. Enough to feel like he still belonged in the world. But after retirement, one by one, those small anchors disappeared. No one needed him to do anything anymore. Meals were prepared by others. The house was cleaned by the kids. Conversations grew fewer. The calendar hung frozen on a date he no longer remembered. At first, he told himself it was just a transition, a new chapter, a peaceful life with no pressure, no deadlines, no race. But what he didn't expect was how that calm, drifting life slowly made him lose his sense of self. There were days he sat from morning to evening, unable to recall a single thing he had actually done. He watched people outside his window moving about, and he just sat there. No illness, no tragedy. Yet it felt as if he was slowly fading from the current of life. One afternoon, he caught a glimpse of his neighbor, an old man who used to be a skilled bricklayer, now slouched on a stone bench, his once strong, calloused hands resting weakly in his lap. And he said, I don't even know what I'm useful for anymore. It wasn't just a complaint, it was a wake-up call, because deep down, he felt exactly the same. When there's nothing to look forward to, nothing to offer, nothing to wait for, the mind begins to sink, and it doesn't sink alone, it pulls the body with it. No one told him this, that the scariest part of retirement isn't running out of money, it isn't being lonely, it's waking up without a reason to live. No purpose to push you out of bed, no one needing your help, no task to finish. Every day blurs into the next, until all that's left is a quiet, physical existence, a shadow, waiting for time to pass. And if you're thinking, I'll find a new passion, a new purpose, then hear this. No one stumbles upon meaning by accident. It must be created, protected, nurtured every single day. Because if you don't, the emptiness will start to seep in, silently, softly, until one day you wake up and realize you no longer care about anything at all. The fourth truth, the loneliness. No one warns you about what broke him. Wasn't the silence. It was the emptiness that hid beneath the silence, the kind no one ever warns you about. When he was still working, he didn't have to try to have conversations. Just stepping outside the house meant hearing a familiar voice. A greeting from a neighbor, a quick chat with a coworker, a smile from the vendor at the corner stall. Every small interaction was a thread, tying him to the world outside. But just a few weeks after retirement, he began to realize a truth no one ever said aloud. You can have a family, you can have friends, you can have a phone full of contacts and still feel completely alone. Because suddenly, no one reaches out, no one texts. Meeting tomorrow? No one calls. Want to grab tea this afternoon? There's no more social schedule keeping you in the loop. Every day he left the TV on, not for entertainment, but to fill the silence. Yet the voices he heard weren't talking to him. He watched people through the window, commuting to work, kids heading to school, the world moving fast while he just sat there. No appointments, no plans, no one waiting for him to be anywhere on time or otherwise. Some evenings he picked up his phone, thinking of calling someone, but then quietly put it down. Not because no one would answer, but because he was afraid he might be intruding, afraid he no longer mattered in their lives. There were moments he even wished someone would dial the wrong number, just so he could hear a real human voice again. Loneliness doesn't crash in all at once. It arrives quietly when no one checks in, when no one's waiting for your reply, when your name isn't spoken in anyone's conversation anymore. He used to believe he'd get used to it, that with time he'd adjust. But the truth is this: loneliness isn't just a feeling. It's a kind of silence that lingers until you begin to question whether your existence still matters. No one prepared him for that. No retirement plan ever taught him that you must be the one to stay connected, that you must be the one to schedule, to reach out, to create reasons to be remembered. Not because people have abandoned you, but because life outside keeps moving forward and just forgets to check back in on you. And if you don't step out of that quiet space on your own, it will slowly pull you into a shadowed place where even though you're still alive, no one really notices anymore. The fifth truth: your spouse may no longer be the anchor. They once were. After retiring, he thought at the very least he still had her, the one who had walked beside him through every high and low, the one who knew him best, the one who once said, "As long as we have each other, that's enough." But just a few weeks in, he realized something no one had ever warned him about. Presence doesn't always mean connection. Back when life was full of responsibilities, they had reasons to care, to check in about work, to plan weekends, to manage the kids, to simply navigate the chaos together. But now, with no real duties binding them, they slowly drifted into separate worlds without even meaning to. She had her own rhythm, her routines, her favorite TV shows. He stayed in the living room, reading the same old newspaper, watching TV without knowing what he was even watching. Some days he wanted to invite her for a walk, but she was busy with her drama series. Other times she shared stories about her friends, and he just nodded, half listening. They still lived under the same roof, still shared the same meals, but between them grew an invisible distance. Not one either of them created on purpose, but one that deepened with time. There were nights he lay in bed, back turned to hers, eyes wide open in the dark, feeling completely alone. Even with the steady sound of her breathing right beside him, he used to think love in old age was simple, just being there for one another, holding hands as you walk toward the final chapter. But he didn't expect that without conversation, without shared moments. Even the closest person could slowly become a stranger. And the heartbreaking part? They both knew it, but neither said a word. Not because they didn't care, but because they didn't want to hurt each other, because they didn't know where or how to begin again. So the silence stretched on, as if they had grown used to not leaning on each other anymore. No one told him this, that after retirement, if you don't intentionally nurture intimacy, even with something as simple as a cup of tea together in the afternoon, distance will form quietly, like a tiny crack. That grows year after year. Marriage doesn't collapse in one day, but it fades if no one fights to keep it alive. And the most frightening thing isn't fighting. It's having nothing left to say. No one taught him that. No one reminded him that in old age, you don't need a crowd. You just need one person who still truly listens, like they did in the beginning. The sixth truth: the silence. No one notices. The final days of his life weren't loud. They weren't chaotic. There was no tragedy, no warning, no dramatic turn. Just quiet mornings drifting by, Afternoons by the window with no one calling his name. Evenings lying on the same old bed, with nothing to look forward to when tomorrow comes. No pain, no accidents, no bad news from a doctor, but also no one asking how he was really doing. No one noticed that he, the man who once spoke often, laughed easily and cared about every little detail, was slowly becoming quieter, less present, less involved in the world around him. He didn't blame anyone. Everyone was busy. His children had their careers, neighbors had their own lives. His wife still moved around the house, but no longer studied the expressions on his face like she once did. And so silence became a habit, a wall that quietly formed around him, invisible to everyone else. He used to be the one to start conversations, to offer coffee, to tell stories over dinner. But slowly his words were met with less curiosity, less attention. And eventually he stopped trying. Not because he had nothing left to say, but because he believed no one needed to hear it anymore. That silence, no one thought much of it. No one saw it as a problem. But it was a problem. It was the sign of a soul quietly shrinking inward, like a small flame flickering in a dark corner, about to fade. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He didn't demand to be seen. He just sat there each day, a little quieter than the last, as if he was gently stepping back from the world, so softly, so politely, so he wouldn't bother anyone. And when he passed, many were shocked. I just saw him in the garden the other day. Yes, he was still there, but no one had truly touched the part of him that mattered most, the quiet space inside where his spirit lived. No one warned that silence can kill a person more slowly than any illness. It doesn't set off alarms. It doesn't knock someone down. It just makes them disappear, bit by bit, right in front of the people they love the most, until it's too late to bring them back. Looking back on everything that happened, he didn't regret growing old. Aging, after all, is a natural part of life. He didn't blame anyone for his retirement. He didn't resent the quiet that followed. The only thing he did regret was believing that simply stopping work would bring him peace, happiness, and safety. He stepped into this new chapter, hoping for rest. But what he received was a world that slowly peeled away from him. Piece by piece, his sense of control, his health, his purpose, his connection with his wife and children, his place in the hearts and minds of others, and eventually even his connection to himself. No one warned him. When you let go of the little things that once tethered you to life, the habits, the relationships, the simple question, what am I doing today? Life doesn't vanish all at once. It withdraws, quietly, invisibly. Not everyone will go through what he did. Some people retire and remain joyful, active, full of discovery and passion. But here's the difference. They prepared. They didn't step into emptiness and hope to fill it later. They carried purpose, connection, and intention with them from the start. If he could go back, he would do things differently. Not because he feared death, but because he finally understood how to live before death quietly arrives. He wouldn't wait for something to show up after retirement. He would create it himself. He would clearly tell his family what he needed. He would keep his daily rhythm, maintain his old routines, set new goals, and most importantly, he would not allow silence to become the default. And if you are standing at the edge of a new chapter in life, ask yourself, are you choosing what's truly good for you or simply what's easy? Because some choices seem gentle on the surface, but cost you a lifetime of fading away unnoticed. The life you have today, the schedules, the familiar voices, the sense of purpose, the tiny moments that remind you that you matter, those are the things most worth holding on to. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story taught you something, leave a comment below and share it with someone you care about. Because maybe one sentence from you could awaken a soul slowly slipping into silence without anyone noticing.